As-Salaam Alaikum, family. Greetings and peace to everyone who is watching. I'd like to firstly begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. I'd like to greet all our viewers in the greeting words of peace of As-Salaam Alaikum. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of the Rise Magazine podcast, which is an audible representation of Rise Magazine. Make sure you get your copy, www.risemagazineco.com. Please make sure you support. You can see the information at the bottom of the screen. Without further ado, today we have a very interesting, very important discussion that we'll be talking about, and that's Black women and mental health. Before we get in and introduce the sisters who we have on the panel who will be sharing information, giving insight, tips, I firstly want to thank the CEO and founder of Rise Magazine, the visionary of the podcast, that is Student Regional Minister Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad. We thank him so much for allowing us to really come on and express what we need to express without being edited. That's both in the magazine and on the podcast. And so we thank him for that and for his vision. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a really great podcast today. I'm really excited for all the sisters to introduce themselves and to share information about mental health. I want to make a disclaimer for anyone who may be triggered by certain words that are said throughout the course of the episode. Please know that you can pause, you can come back if you need to, but please try your best to stay, listen. There'll be, as I mentioned, really good insight, really good information shared. So please, if you're struggling with mental health, stay tuned and let's see what the sisters have to say about it. And so today we have our beautiful sisters, Sister Taylor, the co-host, Sister Odetta, we have Sister Shireen, Sister Judith, and Sister Iman. And now, Sister Taylor, if you can take it away and let the sisters introduce themselves.
Absolutely. First, I would like to start off by saying, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger. I am so excited for today's session. I know the last time we spoke about mental health, it was absolutely excellent. So many people wrote in saying how beneficial it was. And I'm excited to get that same feedback today. I would love if the sisters would go down in order, starting with Sister Odetta, moving to Sister Shireen, Sister Judith, and Sister Iman. If you would like to introduce yourselves, just give a little bit of background on where you're from and what mosque you belong to, and why you're here and what you want to talk about. Go ahead, Sister Odetta.
Yes, ma'am. And I too must open up in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. And I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted Christ, and that the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is our divine reminder servant in our midst. And it is only in their names can I come before and represent anything of any value with the greeting words of peace of As-Salaam Alaikum. My name is Sister Odetta Muhammad, and once again, just thanking Brother Minister Sharrieff, please, on our behalf, and Sister Aziza, your beautiful presence of such an articulate young lady. I have been listening to the podcast. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 29 years and 5 months. And I've also, in that process of being a nurse, I have taken on a lot of different responsibilities, but the one that's most associated with our topic today, I am a certified tobacco treatment specialist. And at Grady Hospital, I do provide sessions for those who are trying to quit not only tobacco, but also as well as drugs, marijuana, the new thing that everyone is trying to get off of. But that work has been continuous for over 12 years as a specialist. But my service primarily is just loving the people and trying to serve best and represent that man of God who I tell you, I humbly am so honored to just represent today. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity to give the testimony of how Minister Farrakhan saves lives.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. As-Salaam Alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I am Sister Shireen Muhammad. I am a professional certified school counselor and marriage and family therapist. And I'm definitely here to bear witness to the truth and the life-giving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as represented to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Thank you so much. Sister Judith, if you would like to move next.
As-Salaam Alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. I would say I'm a mental health advocate, even more so since the death of my children's father. He had taken his life in 2017. And prior to that, my oldest daughter, deals with anxiety. So I've been doing that work for some time, just spreading the word of mental health awareness.
Beautiful.
As-Salaam Alaikum. Am I on now?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much.
ma'am.
As-Salaam Alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. I further bear witness that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted Christ, and that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is our divine reminder and warner in our midst. Thank you so much to Student Minister Abdul, Sharrieff, Muhammad, and the staff at Rise Magazine for convening such a very important topic of mental health to erase the stigma in our communities about our health and understand that the connection between mind and body is very real, and that there is nothing wrong with saying that you need help when you need it and seeking out that help. And we hope that today we can share some techniques and some treatments that are readily available to you, regardless to whether you have insurance or not. We want to give you something that you can take away with you right away. My name is Iman Ali. I'm out of Mosque number 2, Chicago, and Mas Mariam, and grew up there. And I've had my own bouts with depression, especially in my earlier years of life, and found my way out of that. And so today I'm an integrative therapist. I treat pain, anxiety, nausea, insomnia, digestive issues, but also we really focus in on the mind-body connection. I'm a Reiki master teacher, and we'll talk about that and how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had a son and has a son who could heal with his hands. And so we'll.
Okay, there we go.
Sister Iman, you are on mute.
Okay, praise be to Allah. That was beautiful. Thank you, sisters, for introducing yourselves. And once again, I'm really excited, and I want to get right into the questions and answers. So myself and Sister Taylor will be asking you all a few questions. Some will be specifically for certain sisters. So there may be a question that's specifically for Sister Shireen or Sister Judith or Sister Odetta. And then there'll be questions that either sister can answer. And so those of you who are tuned in, you can leave your questions in the comments. Leave it in the comments, and then we'll read it out. Inshallah, you'll have your questions answered. So to go into the first question, and this is for anyone who wants to answer, why do you think there is a stigma with Black women and mental health?
Mhm.
And that's the question. So anyone who wants to answer.
I'll take that. Can you
I
hear
was
me?
about to go right ahead.
Okay. Yes. I think from my experience, I think there's just there's a stigma as a whole when it comes to the Black community and mental health. We have, and particularly with Black women, we are always looked at as, being the strong female in our families. We have had to play both roles, many of us as mothers and fathers. We are the matriarchs of our families, and people look to us for strength and guidance, of course, our grandmothers throughout. And so I think that the knowledge of that it's okay and that the mind and the body are connected. I think that information got lost for many of us. We were not taught properly of how the mind and the body are connected. So, for example, if I am stressed out or I feel stress, well, there's the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said there's a science to everything, but we haven't gone into the science of stress. So if I'm under stress, my brain is not operating in its normal capacity. In fact, the part of the brain that controls the stress hormone and chemical cortisone is in the back of the brain, the amygdala. So when that part of the brain is lit under stress and pressure, the front part of the brain, called the prefrontal lobe or prefrontal cortex, which controls our ability to think rationally, to make proper decisions, that part of the brain is dull. And so this part of the brain, the amygdala, controls fight or flight. That's a survival mode. And so when it's there when we have real dangers. The problem is if we stay in a state like there is a perceived danger when there's really not. And the reality is we are always under attack in our communities. We can go into our communities and we can feel like I'm in Chicago. You can drive down Stony Island, and by the time you get by 87th and Stony Island, you feel an energy. If you keep driving and you get into Hyde Park, the same street, the energy shifts, it changes. Why? Because the thinking and the feelings of the people in that community is creating the atmosphere in which they live. So if I'm in survival mode and I'm thinking about how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to eat, how I'm going to feed my 5 children, I can't get creative because the brain is not even operating properly to be able to make the right decision. So the stress cortisol, that also triggers what we know as our fat genes. And so it causes a surge of energy in our bodies that makes us eat more and makes us gain weight. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think that we just haven't understood the real science of what is happening in our mind and in our body and how that's affecting our entire life. And so when we see someone acting out of character, you know, we say, oh, that's so and so. We've put them in the room and we say she'll be all right and all of that, but we don't understand that that person might have some serious traumas that they've never gotten over, and they may be continually playing the same track or the same thought and feeling and emotion over and over again. And the problem with that is that when you stay in that stress hormone and stress chemical, it causes a series of imbalances in our mind and in our bodies. And so I think that there's just a fear factor of being labeled crazy or being all of these words that we've heard, you know, and I think that it's about education. And once we begin to educate ourselves about the science of it, we'll see it's quite normal, and and there's a physical reason why a person might be acting the way that they are, mental and physical and also spiritual.
I would like to address that if I may.
Yes,
Sure.
Sharrieff.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Sister Iman, for that beautiful explanation. I love the way that she tied the mental to the physical and the spiritual. You know, as we're taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that Allah came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. One of his purposes was to resurrect the spiritually and mentally dead. And so we see mental health. When we speak of mental health, we think of it as irreparable, as an irreparable condition. Like, you know, there is no way you can come back from being someone who's seen walking the streets, talking to themselves, you know, known as crazy, you know. So there is this negative stigma associated with that. If we knew that certain conditions that we are comfortable with saying, oh, I'm just feeling depressed today. You know, we're comfortable with saying that, but we don't realize that that is a mental illness. You know, depression is a mental illness. As we slide down the emotional tone scale from enthusiasm down to death and beyond into psychosis, we are now in the realm of mental illness. So I think, as the sister said, I agree that education is the key, so that we can know that these conditions are repairable, we are reformable. There are ways that we can address these concerns, and so we would be okay with saying, okay, this is the condition that I'm in.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent answers. Thank you, Sister Sharrieff and Sister Iman. Taking us into our next question, we'll have Sister Taylor getting more information from the sisters on this important topic.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Sister Aziza. And those answers were absolutely beautiful. They struck several questions, but the first one that I want to start with is seeing the impact that social media has on young minds. And this question is really for myself. So I'm 26, trying to get my feet under me, trying to get in this corporate world and different things, like not really this corporate world, my own professional entrepreneurial goals. And so I have a lot of self-doubt, overcoming that imposter syndrome, and it's duly in part due to social media and comparison. So what advice do you all have for people who are going through and looking at social media and kind of comparing themselves? No matter how hard I fight it, it just kind of naturally happens, and you think you're supposed to be farther than you are, and so on and so forth. But it impacts your mental health, because you can get sadder at times thinking you're not where you're supposed to be. You can get overexcited and maybe potentially a little overconfident and not, go back to your studies and things of that nature, thinking you've gotten somewhere. So what advice do you have in overcoming self-doubt and imposter syndrome and kind of staying grounded mentally?
Yeah, any sister can answer.
Okay, I'd like to answer it. I'd like to share. Just prior to coming on this evening, my oldest daughter, Nefertiti Muhammad, she's going on 32 years old. She has a master's degree in biochemistry research. She studies cancer cells at the Northwestern University in the lab. So you can imagine that it's high stress. And whenever you're doing research, sometimes the samples don't come out and different things happen. So you sound just like Nefertiti. She's always like, oh, Mom, I don't feel like I know enough. I don't feel like this and that, because she's always comparing herself. And she called this evening and was sharing with my mother and myself that, she just felt really stressed and she wanted to move on to something else. And so she had just met with the lady over the lab, and she was basically pleading with my daughter to stay there. And she said, well, I feel like I'm not being productive. And so she's like, no, you are. So I think that's very common. When you're young, you're still getting to know yourself, growing into your own power. And I think, the worst thing you can do is compare yourself to others, regardless to if they have a master's degree, if they have a PhD. Just grow into yourself. Grow into yourself.
Beautiful answer. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other sister want to answer that question?
I can answer it. We're talking about the need to be affirmed, to be validated.
Yeah.
We have this need as human beings. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says it's not drugs, as we deal with addiction, as our sister Odetta is working on and helping our people with. It's not the drug itself, it's the relationships. And so people find themselves in a circumstance or in circumstances where they are not validated. So that's something that we have to learn to do as we are being completely re-educated, to validate one another. We're easy to invalidate. We're quick to invalidate. We validate babies. When they're babies, we're normally naturally validating. Oh, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful, oh, so cute, and then as that child begins to grow up you're so clumsy, you're so you're so slow, or you're so whatever. Just a
Right.
negative adjective in the description. We're not as forgiving. We know a baby does something, oh okay, then you clean it up. As soon as about 3 years old, we begin to criticize, and just put all of these negative affirmations onto that child into adulthood and beyond.
Yeah.
So the validation will help us to feel that I am okay just the way that I am, and I can improve upon all of those things that I do great.
Mm-hmm.
I like to comment also.
Yes, Master
You
Dedica.
know, as I'm listening to all of the responses, all I can really think to myself is what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has given us in the form of a refuge prayer. Because we have to know who we belong to and whose we belong to in any endeavor. Whatever social class, economic status, it doesn't really matter. You got to know who you're serving. And so when you're connected with the God, and that is why we are studying so closely the role of the woman right now. Our study guides are focusing on what happens to the woman when she's in need of attention from a man. We're studying the reality of what happens when you lose hope and what happens when you're in a circumstance such as with Minister Louis Farrakhan and his mother and the circumstances of his birth. So we have to begin, as Sister Shireen just said, begin to validate ourselves, but more importantly, follow the instructions that gets us through each day until those prayers are like a celebration. Our refuge prayer is a celebration, sister, of not being of a world that is confused. Because if you look at the definition of socially victimized, which is part of the topic for this discussion, it's called being targeted. So we are being targeted. And who caused this? What is the cause of our being targeted? Our slave master. He's giving us the definition of who we are as women still. And so we're being taught to separate our minds from the slave master's mind. The more we separate ourselves from the slave master's mind, we will find the peace of mind in these types of dialogue where we say, all praise is due to Allah. Of course, we will
Allahu Akbar.
always be a part of this world, but to separate ourselves from the mind, then we can offer the peace and the tranquility that we're looking for each and every one of the people that we meet every single day.
Wow, that was beautiful.
Yes, it was. It gave me chills on that one. Thank you so much
Yes,
for sharing, sis. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
beautiful
ma'am.
responses.
All praises due to Allah.
Okay, to take us into the next question, and this is for any sister, but you all at the beginning introduced yourselves and your profession. And for all of you who are on this panel today, if you can just explain what have you noticed in your profession with mental health. And we have someone, Sister Judith, who is an advocate for mental health, and she shared earlier about just watching her daughter and the experience with her husband. So if any of you can just share what's something that you learned working in your profession or being a witness of mental health that you've learned and that you would like to share, particularly to young girls, teenagers, early 20s who are struggling, self-harming, contemplating suicide. What advice would you give them based on what you've learned?
Well, I like to say something. I would first tell them, because my daughter, when she was in grad school, by that time, she just really started I felt like she was overwhelmed. I didn't think like mental health, and I would do like wellness calls to check on her. And she said, I can't get out of bed, and I'm like, well, what's wrong? She said, I just can't get out of bed. Something that was so very easy for her. And she started going to therapy. So once she completed everything, the lady over the department said, you can come home and then go back and do your thesis. So right away, I went to the internet and I found where she can go to a therapist. And so I went with her the first day, and she's been going to her for 7 years. And one thing she found out was that my daughter thinks in black and white, and meaning that she feels like she has to do all of X, Y, and Z. And if she doesn't complete that, then she's overwhelmed and, her anxiety kicks in. So since that time, she's been doing a talk therapy, and it really helps her. So I would recommend to young people sometimes if you have a issue with the word therapist, think about life coach. And it's somebody that will help you navigate through life, help you to make decisions that may be kind of complicated for you. But you can get a therapist, and just think about it just like if you had a personal trainer at the health club. So that's one thing I would recommend.
Praise be to Allah. Good advice. Thank you, Sister Judith.
You're welcome.
Any other sister care to share?
I can share. I work with young people all day long. Praise be to Allah. You know, it's loving yourself. Sister Odetta said it, you know, the anxiety prayer, all of those things we have and we make use of them. But it's also building relationships and choosing them wisely. You know, as I speak about validation, those who invalidate you, they're not your friends. They're not the ones to be around. You choose your friends according to how they make you feel, how they treat you, how you treat them. You know, create balance in your life. You know, Minister Ava, I'm thinking about her words and talking about balance. You know, we have the study guide on balance. You know, to make sure that if it's a relationship of give and take, you give, you receive, they give, they receive. You're not feeling like I'm always giving, and they're not giving back. You don't have to stay in that relationship. You are Allah's choice. God has chosen you. And once you know that, then you know I don't have to be a slave for anyone, not a friend, not a family member. You're not a slave. You are God's choice.
Absolutely.
Praise be to Allah. Beautifully said, Sister Shireen. And Sister Iman, I'm sorry, but I'm going to call you out. And this question is going to be specifically for you.
Yes,
Just as a Reiki teacher, can you explain the mind-body connection again, and how, you know, just thoughts can really affect your physical health, and why we see a lot of sicknesses and young women, older women, but a lot of times the sicknesses are due to mental issues. So can you explain the connection between the mind and body, and why it's so important to take care of both?
sure. I wanted to just say that, you know, the comment about the validation is so important. And then when she was speaking about the people who invalidate you, and then relationships, you know, as Sister Judith talked about how brilliant her daughter is, you know, at Northwestern. I also am an affiliate of Northwestern University, particularly the Feinberg School of Medicine, where I studied the impact of Reiki massage on cancer patients. And so when you are in those realms, okay, sometimes that takes you out, a lot of times that takes you out of your normal circle, okay, of so-called friends and family. So now you're in a different type of environment. And then once you come back into your regular environment, now you're trying maybe to share with people who can't really understand or receive what you have, the value of what you're trying to tell them. I remember just recently we've opened the As-Salaam Community Wellness Center there in Chicago, in the Woodlawn area. So if you're in Chicago, we, under the brilliant guidance of Dr. Constance Shabazz, we have an amazing team of Muslim doctors, MDs, integrative therapists, Chinese medicine. I work with the Salam for the mind-body connection, but we address mental health in our communities. We address addiction. We address nutrition and internal medicine right there in the community. So please support the Salam Community Wellness Center when you're coming into Chicago. Please stop by and even give a call. We have services that you can get, even if you are, you know, not physically in Chicago. And of course, you can call my number as well. I'm here in Georgia now. But what we're looking at is the fact that number one, we don't realize that we are still underneath what they call post-traumatic stress. Well, we have post-traumatic slave syndrome. Okay, this is generations of trauma, okay, that our people have been through. I recently was casted on Jay-Z and Will Smith's Women of the Movement, which is the Emmett Till story. If you haven't seen that, it's on Hulu. Please get it. We are still pushing to get justice for 14-year-old Emmett Till 67 years later, okay? But being on that set down in Mississippi, which I'm originally from, born just 30 minutes from where Emmett Till was killed, murdered. So all our lives we're growing up, we're hearing what happened to Emmett Till. Okay, and I'm using this as an example. So in that fear factor is constantly fed to us that something like that could happen to us. That's in fact the reason why they did lynchings and left those bodies hanging, so that they can tell the other slaves that this is what will happen to you if you get out of line. And as Mamie Till did not even want her son to go down into Mississippi for the fear of what could happen to him if he went to Mississippi. Very bright, brilliant young man, articulate, loved to dress. He was not a black male who felt like he had to cow down. And so she was concerned about that. But look at what has happened 67 years later. We are still seeing the blood of our young men out, spilling out into the streets. And so many of us as mothers of black male children, we have that fear that something could happen to them psychologically. So we're running programs because of the generational trauma that we have gone through. And so even in the community where Emmett Till is from, they call it the O Block in the city of Chicago. We have, what do we have right now? A gang war in the city of Chicago, where you talk about the deaths of King Von and Duck in that area, okay? And so you're talking about generations and generations and generations of violence and trauma that we've turned in on ourselves, okay? And so how can a person that lives in a community like that have any type of feeling of security that they're going to go home from school and not get murked on their way home and not get shot on their way home? We know this is real. So in reference to, just take, for example, 16-year-old Darian Albert, when he got killed in Chicago, the little boys that were in an after-school fight over in Argyle Gardens in the city of Chicago, that shocked the whole nation because it was filmed and went viral, okay? So you see these kids fighting, but it ended in the death of a 16-year-old boy. So what happens to the rest of the children who were traumatized by that event? Well, we went into that community and talked with those children and their parents after the fight, the ones who, so quote unquote, started the fight. But we took that young boy, 16 years old, also, Vashawn Bullock, and we brought him out. He was expelled from the city of Chicago schools. He said, I have always had straight A's. I said, but we're in a community, forced into a community where it's known gang rivalry. We don't know if we're going to make it home at night. We don't know. I have to take care of my cousins who also go to this school. So these children are going to school. They can't learn under that type of stress. So you see the grades are down and everything is affected by that. But we took that young boy, Vashawn Bullock, and got him into Muhammad University after Chicago Public Schools expelled him. And the one thing, when the Chicago Tribune came over to Muhammad University to interview him, I personally got him into Muhammad University. And when they came over there, they said, can you tell us one word that describes where you were at Finger High School at Chicago Public Schools and where you are now at Muhammad University? And he said, heaven. He said, I don't have to worry about if I'm going to make it home. Everything is this. So it put him in a relaxed state of mind where he could even just learn and get through. And he did graduate, by the way, from Muhammad University of Islam. All praise is due to Allah for the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and these teachings. And so when we look at every single thing that we are suffering from, when the sister said validation, and what standard are we measuring ourselves? Are we comparing ourselves to? When we got the knowledge of self, that Master Farad Muhammad said that he could sit, okay, on top of the world and say the best civilization is here because of us as a female, then that should be and it has been, okay, because we know that we have faced, all of us face racism, systemic racism, systematic systems that are put in place to keep us in a lower type of frequency. And so what we know is that we're battling on so many levels. But what is happening to our mental and our bodies? I have actually worked in the entertainment industry for many, many years. And when Kanye West had his very public breakdown, we went to the airways to defend Kanye because, first of all, you don't know, there's the mental stress that was on Kanye West. And when we saw Kanye come and everything that he has done has been as a result of a strong Black female mother who didn't want to medicate her son, who chose not to medicate him at 5 years old. I can also say that we are also looking at a serious breakdown when it comes to being able to wrap our arms around those who we know in our families are suffering at some level. And it's really because we're not understanding what's happening. When I think I was about 19, my father died of a trauma. And at that trauma, I kept going, graduated from school. And then 3 years later, something happened to me. And I ended up in the hospital with what they call situational depression. And my mother at the time felt that, me being in the Nation of Islam somehow contributed. And she wanted to take all of my books and try to throw them out. But I snuck study guide number 3, Overcoming Difficulty, into that hospital with me. And the next day, I read one sentence that the minister said, that Jesus overcame the world. And I thought to myself, if I'm here because of my thinking, I can get out of here because of my thinking. If Jesus overcame the world, I can't overcome these circumstances. So the study guide is what got me up and out of that hospital. And then when they tried to give me medication, I wouldn't take the medication. But what I did was I pulled the curtain back in my room. I laid on the floor in what now I know is a yoga pose. It was just laying flat on my back. I pulled the curtain back so that the sunlight can come in. And I played a Native American drumming. And I did not realize that the vitamin D3 was stimulating my pineal gland, which helps with my mood, was producing serotonin, which helps with mood. I didn't realize that. I didn't know the science of what I was doing. I didn't realize the position I was in on the floor on my back was a restorative yoga position to help the body's relaxation response trigger. I didn't realize that the drumming that I was hearing was also beginning to stimulate me and stimulate energy in my body. And so all I knew, I was feeling better. And I didn't need medication at that. What I did need, because I was dealing with more of an emotional situation. When I went to school at Columbia College, I saw 2 classes I had to take electives. And one of them, 4-letter word I had never seen before. That word was yoga. But I knew, based off of what it would do for me, that I needed that. So I took that class. This was 1995, by the way. There were no yoga studios out. There were no yoga mats and all of that. And there was another class, Mystical Consciousness, East and West, which I learned meditation and how to locate in my body where the memories were from the traumas that I experienced growing up on the west side of Chicago that all came rushing back at 23 years old, where that was in my body. And I learned how to meditate to heal myself of that and rid the body of the memory of that emotion that was attached. The body stores memory. The body stores memory. And when I was in that hospital, I realized that those people were taking that medication thinking that medicine was going to help them. And I said, these people they need more than this. I said, at 22 years old, I think I was, I said, I want to do something about that. And today I work with so many doctors are my patients. I have a lot of doctors who are my patients. And I realized that through meditation, through helping my client move out of a anxiety level of brainwaves, which is beta, and moving down into a alpha brainwave state through meditation. It takes 20 minutes to bring yourself back to a state of calm, to bring yourself back to a state of equilibrium. Breathing, all of these techniques I learned and am now a therapist helping so many people to do what I did years ago, kind of stumbled upon, all praises due to Allah, was guided by that. So I hope I answered your question, but I was trying to give some real examples for people who might be going through something now to see that this is real and you can come up out of it. You absolutely can.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much for sharing, Sister Iman. Our next question is going to go to Sister Odetta specifically, and then other sisters can chime in. But before going on to Sister Odetta, her response, and Sister Taylor for the question, I first want to read out some of the comments that we're getting. And so we have Sister Fatima Muhammad. She said, As-Salaam Alaikum, Rise Magazine, greetings from Jamaica. We have Modest God. She says, As-Salaam Alaikum, family. We have Urelisi Muhammad. As-Salaam Alaikum, beloved family. Again, Sister Urelisi, trapped engrams causing aberrations of the mind is one of her responses. We have Sister Tanisha X. As-Salaam Alaikum, Queens. Sister Ebony Simone. She says, As-Salaam Alaikum, Allahu Akbar. Sister Pamela gives the fire emojis. Inshallah, she's enjoying the show. Let's see, there's some more comments. Let's see. Sister Ebony wrote, your thought called what you needed to recover. And then she also wrote, the God within took over, sis. So everyone's bearing witness. And once again, we thank our sisters on the panel for sharing such beautiful information. And so without further ado, Sister Taylor, if you can take us on to the next question.
All right. As-Salaam Alaikum. I think that this has been so rewarding and so fulfilling, and I'm so grateful that you all joined. I'm already getting text messages from people saying how much they're enjoying it. My next question is, and it was partly hit on by Sister Iman, but I would love to get you all's perspective on what she mentioned, so that masculinity that some of us young ladies have to put on due to trauma, due to seeing our mothers being the head of households, due to being single mothers, and that trauma that's just been passed down through generations, and now walking into or attempting to walk into our divine femininity and exploring that side of ourselves and the impact that it has on our mental state. Speaking from experience, like my mom was Superwoman. Like she got it done. There was no excuses. And so that's how I grew up. But I was emotionally completely lacking on that side. I was very hard. Emotions just was not of me. I just kind of did what I needed to do. I was very black and white, to Sister Judah's point. And that's how I looked at it. There was no crying. It was step 1, step 2, step 3. And so it took me a long time to get into my femininity and learning how to be nurturing to other people, nurturing to people around me. And most importantly, how to be nurturing to myself and give myself grace, because that is also a part of femininity. So what advice do you all have for young sisters trying to step into that femininity and the impact that it's going to make on your mental health? It's a loaded question.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna play school teacher. I'm gonna call out. So I want to call Sister Odetta and then Sister Judith.
All right, school teacher. Here's your apple. I think that's a very good question. And as I meditate on the question, again, just feeling the spirit of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to grow into that nature really is to understand the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and understand what kind of man he is to have loved us in the condition that we are in. I believe that as we not just look at him as an entertainer, as he's told us many times before, we spend too much time just saying, that's right, teach, but to really get into the essence of who he is, studying Closing the Gap. That is a book that would allow you to understand not only the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but your role as a goddess, or should I say a god, because it's not goddess, it's all gods. So for me, as a person who offers so much, Sister Iman, I can really appreciate what you're representing. And that is the true science that we are now opening the floodgates to assist in the mental health issues that we have, that we definitely need. And the more educated we become, the more we understand what's happening. I told my daughter, I would have been a hot mess if I grew up in your time with how social media is playing on your minds. I don't want to spend my day looking at who is going to make me feel beautiful. Minister Farrakhan has given us our definition of our role, our place. And if we do not run to the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad spiritually, then we will not be in a place that is prepared for what's coming down the pike, because this devil knows his time is up. And so he will take down all that he can just using social victimization, meaning changing your behavior, changing your focus, changing what you think of yourself and what you think of your sister. That's why I will constantly repeat the Refuge Prayer. If we study each word, and I had my children literally give me the definition of each word so that they could understand why we're asking refuge in anxiety and grief and the lack of strength. But for me as a professional, and I just want to leave with this point, because as Sister Iman said, there's so much science to the brain that we don't even clearly understand. And one of the things that we deal with in our very first session in my class is addiction. And she mentioned the serotonin. But also, sisters, I want you all to really understand that with addiction, and it's real, that means something that you can't do without after you don't have it for a while. That's called addiction. This is what happens on a brain chemical level, that your brain, just like nicotine, when it is not in the brain, your brain is calling for it, because a dopamine effect is happening in your brain where dopamine is being spilled out and you get all this pleasure. We've got to return to a natural level of receiving pleasure, not constantly looking for pleasure. This is a I gotta have it right now type generation. Sister, slow down. Slow down and smell the roses. Slow down and take a walk. Slow down and read, study, and study the truth. Don't study everyone else's philosophy. I love some great authors, but I'm telling you, the greatest author I know is in the Nation of Islam, Minister Ava, Minister Farrakhan, The Messenger. We have so many books that will get you back on course with Allah. And by the grace of Allah, you won't be looking all over the place. You'll be finding your refuge in sisters like Sister Iman that will give you grounded. You'll find sisters like Sister Judith who can give you a testimony of how she got over from a spiritual component that included God, Master Fard Muhammad. So I thank you for really asking that question. And I pray that the answer that I've given will help someone to just understand the value of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the time that we're living in today.
Praise be to Allah. That was beautiful, beautifully said, Sister Odetta. Thank you so much for that. Okay, next, Sister Judith, if you can please give your response to that question.
Okay, I feel like one of my favorite study guides is The Struggle for Balance. Because in this life, like I grew up, it was just my mother, and then I was the oldest in the family. So it's like with me, I've had to take on responsibilities and being like, and at this point, being mother and father. And sometimes, it's just trying to find that balance. And one thing is growing to love yourself and always fighting for the balance in your life, because sometimes it's like that. You can be kind of hard because, you know, in this world, when you leave the mosque and when you go home, it's a whole nother different situation based on where you live. You know, like with my mother, she's an older person. She can't get up and down the stairs. So I have to go outside, look around, clean the yard, do things that, you know, perhaps a man would do. You know, I have brothers, but they're in Homewood in different places. So, you know, I'm always working to find that balance. And I have my youngest daughter is going to NYU in New York. And so, you know, I won't say she's hardcore, but, you know, she knows that, okay, you in New York. And it's a whole nother ball game. So when you're out here, you know, we carry ourselves in a certain manner and try to stay on alert. But, you know, it's rough out here. It's rough out here. It's a whole nother reality. So that's why we have to stay prayed up, you know, and just being grateful and thankful for every day we wake up. But at the same time, being very aware and always fighting to have balance in our life, to have love in our life, so that we don't become so hard, you know, because it's no man around, or, you know, we have men in our families, but, you know, at the same time, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, but always, you know, just nursing on the word. That's what I would say. Nurse on the word.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, sisters.
You're
And
welcome.
so the next question is going to be specifically for Sister Shireen, and then we'll have a follow-up question which that Sister Taylor will be asking to either a specific sister or a sister that she, or any sister can respond to it. But Sister Shireen, just you working in the school system, working as a counselor, can you share maybe some of the things that you've heard the young students talk about, or things that they're struggling with that really need to be addressed, or that if you can just explain what are our young people going through right now? What are some of the issues that they're struggling with?
So much anxiety and grief, understanding the difference between keeping it real and keeping it real. You know, keeping it real has been provided for them, what that is, what that looks like. And so then everyone is trying to keep it that way, but that's not really real. You know, I'm still thinking about the last question. You know, we have been taught that, you know, as women, we could do it better than men.
Mhm.
We believe we can do it better than men. We cannot do it better than men. We have been taught to distrust our Black men. So our Black men are lynched in front of us, are raped in front of us, are castrated in front of us. Ms. Louis Farrakhan just mentioned at the national training to men, you cannot be a woman. You can't be a woman, and definitely can't be one better than a woman. So when we know that Allah has chosen us and that we are the second self of God, see, these things we have to be reminded of, that we are more valuable than 2 trailer truck loads of the most precious gems. We are valuable to Allah. He chose us. So when we are reminded of that in our MGT and GCC classes, when we say to one another, I am a reflection of you, being mindful of your surroundings. As Sister brought up a beautiful point about when we go out into the world to get an education, and then we come back into our familiar circles, and now we feel like we between because we can't communicate 100 over there, and now no one understands us over here. Well, learn from each other. I'm learning from my sisters on the panel. I haven't studied Reiki. So when my sister Iman starts talking about Reiki, praise be to Allah. I haven't studied that. You know, I have a study that I have studied that I can share, and I can feel good about that. So when I talk to when I listen to young people, you know, they are struggling with fitting in. They are struggling with being received. And also a lot of them are like feeling like they feel like, I feel the energy. I don't like the way that feels. I just want to stay over here, you know, so very sensitive to what's going on around them, and hoping that someone will help get them through. And then you have those that are very confident in who they are and what they're going to do. They have a plan, they have a vision, they're driven, so everyone is not sitting back looking like they're struggling. We have a few that are, but the majority of them, they know what they want and they know what they want to do. And so we have to be mindful as mothers and fathers that we are the protectors of our children, and we know our open enemy, and our open enemy does everything possible to keep our tone at anger and fear, to just hover in between anger, fear, and antagonism. So everything that they're looking at, that they're shown, is about keeping that emotional tone at anger, fear, antagonism, grief, and all those things. But as soon as we start to rise up into enthusiasm, being excited, that's not in vogue. That's not okay. We're not supposed to be happy, but that's where creativity is, in your happiness. And you don't need any drug to be a pseudo enthusiast. You can be enthusiastic just by claiming being excited and meditating, as sister said, saying your prayers and being quiet and listening to Allah and letting him guide you along the path that he wants you to go. He tells you what to do. Then you just move out and do it.
That's right. Wow. Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Sister Sharrieff. Beautifully said. Does anybody else want to give any comments?
Praise belongs to Allah.
Praise belongs to Allah. And Sister Odetta has a poem, part of a poem that she'd like to read. Sister Odetta, you can go ahead and share.
I sure will, with great honor. Just again, before I even read the poem, just praying that each and every one of us, as our study guides is instructing us, to reconnect with Allah. And so this poem is very, very good for an understanding of that value that Sister Sharrieff just spoke of. I'll tell you who the author is. I hope we can get the screen on her. It's called The Everyday Spirit of Savior's Day by guess who? Aziza Muhammad. She said in the first stanza, the MGT and GCC are a masterpiece. We are seeds of potency planted by the hands of our Savior, Allah. Master Farad is the rain that restores us as the mothers of civilization. Our souls are the soil that will till the entire earth. And as we grow into gods, we grasp the meaning of our greatness. There are branches within us. We bridge the gap between struggle and success, birthing the brilliance in the process. Our beautiful Sister Aziza, our podcast director, is the author of this beautiful stanza.
Wow.
Thank you, Sister Aziza.
How can we get that book? Let's see the book. Can I see it?
It's a poem that she wrote.
I thought it was published in a book. Is it published in a book, ma'am?
Not yet. Not yet. Yes, ma'am.
It's beautiful. It speaks to exactly what I was saying.
Thank you so much for that, Sister.
Yes, ma'am.
And so going to the next question, and this will be, well, Sister Taylor, you can go ahead and take us to the next question. I'm about to go ahead of myself, but you can go ahead.
This will be a brief question. I would love so one thing that helped me through my journey of like getting to know myself, building my self-confidence, overcoming self-doubt and imposter syndrome was my affirmations. So I'd wake up, I put them on my mirror. Even if I don't want to utter a word of it, I still say it. And what it did for my life, I can't even measure it. Between that and a lot of it was Allah's word. So I would love if each one of our guests would say 1 or 2 affirmations that you would recommend some of the sisters say, or anybody say, to help build themselves up, to help them get those days started, to help overcome those mental barriers. As soon as you wake up, there are some people who first thing they open their eyes is self-doubt, is self-whatever, is self-accusing spirit. It's all of these things that attack them immediately. So what affirmations do you all have, or do you all use, that you would recommend to the audience?
I am the seed of greatness, and from me came thee. I flow through the anatomy of a wise man who knew to study God's plan, and all that wisdom is where? It's in my hands. From the seat of greatness I am.
Love it, love it, love it.
We're not going to have open mic next week.
Well, as part of the COVID triage team, one of the things that I gave the team to really get an understanding of as we were taking care of the believers is that we're going to love like Farrakhan. And so to love like Farrakhan is the best foot forward that I can possibly offer anyone.
Excellent.
So I love that. Sister Judith and Sister Iman, would you like to share?
Well, I don't have anyone in particular, but because I'm from the church, the same church from Jennifer Hudson, so I love gospel music. So I think every morning between my mother and myself, we have a gospel song going. And to me, it's always a beautiful word, about gratitude or waking up in the morning, feeling the sun or seeing the trees. I'm like a nature person. So whenever I wake up, just a song, it could be just a word. So.
Crazy. So I love it.
Yes, ma'am. So I don't have an affirmation that I do per se. I do use the I am to create whatever it is that I want, because what comes after I am is whatever you're conscious of being. And so my consciousness is greater than all of it, because all of those things might fade, but I am that I am, as the scriptures say. So I use that as a tool, and meditation as a tool to get me started after prayer each morning. And so I let Allah talk to me and tell me what it is that I'm to be doing throughout my day, and what's next for me. And so that's what I do.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Crazy to a lot. Well, I'm really sad to say this, but we're coming close to an end now. I want to keep going. I want to keep hearing from my beautiful sisters. I also want to mention that at the bottom of the screen, you'll see all of their contact information on the screen. If you'd like to contact them, talk about something. If there's a particular sister who really resonated with you by her answers, you can contact them and get some more information. And so I want to bring up two things. So, of course, Rise Magazine, I'm going to bring it out. And I'm going to bring out this particular issue. It says on the front cover, "A nation can rise no higher than its woman." And then you see student Minister Ava on the front cover. And so for all the sisters who are on today, please purchase that copy. It really shows the essence of the Black woman, our importance. There's a variety of beautiful things in this particular issue, discussing fashion, discussing health. There is something that we did with twins. So on twins in the Nation of Islam, how their minds work, similarities they have, their differences. So it was really interesting. So please purchase that copy. It really goes into some of the things that we were discussing today, and I'll hold it up. You can get it at www.risemagazineco.com. Once again, that's www.risemagazineco.com, and it's on the screen. Another thing that's written on this issue and all the other issues of the magazine is join the Nation of Islam and live. And so throughout the course of this discussion, we spoke about, you heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so really they're the ones who have brought life to a people who were dead. All of us can bear witness of that, and you can hear it just by the answers to the questions that were asked on today's panel. And so for anybody who's suffering with mental illness, who's suffering with anxiety or depression, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and I would say personally for myself, I've suffered from pretty much all of those things. I openly say it. And something that really, really helped me is Islam, God, Allah, and the minister, the messenger, really hearing their words, hearing what they have to say, their definition of who I am when I didn't know who I was. That's what really, really brings you through from a dark state to a light state. We call it the life-giving teachings because it really brings you life. And there's no better place to be but the Nation of Islam. For those of you who may want to find out more information, you're unfamiliar, the first thing I would say is don't hesitate. Don't hesitate at all. Nation of Islam, it will save your life. And I say that I bear witness, someone who's been in the Nation of Islam going for 3 years now, going on 4 years, that it will change your life. It does change your life. You'll go from feeling like, you want to give up to really coming into who you are, what you can do. You can go to NOI.org for information. Visit your local mosque, find out information, but do not hesitate. There's a variety of books you can read. Message to the Black Man in America, Our Savior Has Arrived. And it'll give you the definition of who you are as a Black woman, who you are as a Black man, knowing that you don't have to give up. God came for us, and he wants us to be successful, regardless of who says what. Really, you will learn who you are, and the Nation of Islam will teach you. Another thing that we have on each issue of Rise Magazine is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the mouthpiece of Allah God in our midst. And you heard a lot of the sisters today reference the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. For those of you who may be unfamiliar or who may have heard his name, but still not too sure who he is, Google has everything. You can go on YouTube, just type his name in, and you'll get a variety of different books, a variety of lectures to see who he is, what he represents, why he is referred to as the mouthpiece of Allah God in our midst. Once you see a quote from a book, or even just a clip of a video, you'll immediately understand. So please, everyone who's watching, just type his name in Google. You'll find what you need to find. Of course, there'll be negative things said because when there's a powerful positive force, the enemy will throw in negativity purposely. We spoke about negative forces. And so look at it, look at the positive that the minister has done, look at the positivity and the godliness in his words that were both written and said from his mouth. And another thing that I want to mention is this book was referenced a lot during the course of our conversation. And this is Self-Improvement, the basis for community development. This is study guides 1 through 9. And some of you have heard the panelists mention some quotes from these study guides. And these are a course of study that the minister has given us to deal with any issue that you may be going through. Really, anything, any emotion that you're feeling, any mood that you may be in, all you have to do is turn to a page, you'll look at it, open it up, and there'll be something in there for you.
Ma'am.
And so we're going to end with a quote from this study guide, and this is study guide 7, Building the Will. And the minister says here, the more you and I manifest the results of self-examination, self-analysis, and self-correction, the more we demonstrate that we have been touched by Allah. Through our works, we will prove to the world that Allah has intervened in our lives and is at the very root of this resurrection process that we are now a part of. And so for all of our viewers, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Praise be to Allah. Once again, we want to thank our student regional minister, Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad, for his vision of this podcast, for the vision of the magazine. We thank our beautiful, beautiful sisters for coming on that I thoroughly enjoyed. Sister Odetta, Sister Iman, Sister Shireen, and Sister Judith. Thank you so much, sisters, for joining us and for your beautiful insight. You all had such great things to say. I don't want to leave you. Thank you so much for all you had to share.
Love you, Sister Aziza.
And we thank you. We thank you. And please give the greetings to Brother Minister Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad. Thank you.
I definitely will. And so, viewers, thank you so much for watching. Please support Rise Magazine. Our Cash App is $Rise Magazine. Please send a donation so that we can keep this going, so that we can keep producing our physical copies of the magazine. That's Cash App $Rise Magazine. And so thank you all. And I leave you as I came in the greeting words of peace of As-Salaam Alaikum.
Wa alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.